One of the things I want to talk about real quick are the different ways that you can perform a repetition, because it's not what you do that matters most, rather, but how you do it. So regardless of whether you train to build muscle, get stronger, improve performance, what you're going to want to do through your training is impose the greatest demand possible without overworking your body's capacity to recover. And as it relates to how you perform a rep, I'm going to talk about different ways to perform a rep and the effect that it will have on the end result. What I won't talk about real quick, I'll tell you at the onset here, is I'm not going to tell you how to increase the demand by including isometric pauses or modifying the range of motion and performing partial reps to increase the demand of muscle at a certain range of motion. I'll save that for another time. For now, I'm going to teach you how to increase the demand when performing a repetition through a full range of motion. Now, the easiest way to increase the demand authentically is to just lift more weight. The heavier weight you lift, the more demanding it's going to be. But the more demanding it's going to be, the greater the recovery demand is going to be as well. So everything's got its pros and cons. Where there are pros, in that heavy weights increase the demand, the cons are that you can't lift heavy for high volumes all the time because you'll overwork your body's capacity to recover, and that's going to be counterproductive. So a more effective way to impose a demand would be to use submaximal weights, and you can impose a demand artificially through your intent by simply choosing to either lift with as much force as possible or trying to contract your muscles as hard as possible. Those are two ways that you can increase the demand on either the brain or the body, and there will be very distinct benefits to doing so. So I'll talk about the pros and cons, and by the end of this, you'll have a better idea of how you might want to perform your repetitions based on your goal. If you lift a submaximal weight with as much force as possible, what happens is your brain's going to perceive the demand to be very, very high. So it's going to recruit the maximum amount of muscle fibers possible as fast as possible. And if you chain a bunch of reps together, you don't just do one rep and you go, relatively quickly from rep to rep, fast eccentric, fast concentric. You're going to have added contribution from the stretch reflex, which is something you might want to learn how to harness depending on what you train for. The negatives to lifting as fast as possible are lower average force output through a full range of motion, because the momentum generated lowers the mass to overcome. So I'll give you a practical example. If you can lift 300 pounds, but you have 200 pounds on the bar and you lift it with 300 pounds of force, it's going to move relatively quickly. And as it moves through space, the required force to keep it moving is going to be lower because it's going to feel like 150 or 100 pounds. And by the end of the range of motion, you might actually have to decelerate the load because you pushed it so hard. So the average force output through a full range of motion is going to be lower. Another con to lifting a lightweight as fast as possible is that if you're using it to maximize the neural adaptation so that you can increase your 1 rep max, to increase your strength, if you never really perform your reps under the conditions under which you want to get better, you're not going to get much better at them. Strength is a skill that is acquired through stress and repetition, and it's a very specific skill. So you're going to want to perform some reps in a manner that at least replicates what a max rep would be to you, and it's not going to be lifting fast, because if it's a max weight, you can't lift it fast by default. It's going to go slow. So those are the cons. The pros to lifting slowly: number one, it's a teaching tool. A lot of people, when they're first learning how to do a movement, if they don't know how to do it properly, you slow it down, boom, it helps them learn the movement quicker. Another thing is it will help diagnose where weaknesses are through a range of motion, because you will feel when a movement gets harder, and wherever it gets harder, that's indicative that you're relatively weaker at that range. Now, it could be due to leverages depending on what movement you're doing, or you could just be weak in that range of motion. Some other benefits would be increased transference to a 1 rep max. Obviously, a 1 rep max is going to go slow, so if you're practicing lifting slow and producing as much tension in the muscles as you can, that's going to replicate a 1 rep max more than lifting faster will. And the benefit to it being a lighter weight, you can practice more reps. It's not going to overwork your body's capacity to recover as much. A couple more benefits would be increased time under tension and no momentum. So to use the same example that I just used when lifting fast, let's say it's 200 pounds on the bar and you can lift 300 pounds, that's your max. If you apply 200 pounds of force, the bar is not going to move. If you apply 201 pounds of force to a 200 pound bar, it's going to move very, very slowly. And you're going to have to sustain that much force to keep the bar moving through a full range of motion. So there's going to be a higher average force output. And if you're contracting your muscles as hard as possible because it's a relatively light weight, The time spent under tension will be time spent under maximal or optimal tension, not time under garbage tension. Whereas if you're lifting a weight, faster and the muscles aren't really producing a lot of force, it's not going to be the most beneficial to you. What I did is I created this little whiteboard because most people are visual learners. So I'll take you through this real quick, hopefully with minimal glare. And this will help what I'm saying stick for most people. So regardless of what you do, you always want to, the underlying reason for why you do anything should be to impose the greatest demand possible without overworking your body's capacity to recover. You can do it authentically by lifting heavy. It's just going to go slow. You can't do a lot of work heavy. You'll overwork your capacity to recover. So artificially, you can increase the demand by your intent, lifting with speed or with tension. Once again, here are the benefits to lifting with speed. Increased recruitment, increased rate of recruitment, increased contribution from the stretch reflex. The cons are lower average force output due to increased momentum and lower transference to a 1 rep max. If I go down a little bit here, we got tension. You want to maximize intramuscular tension when lifting slow. Increased average force output due to lower momentum. Increased time under tension, time under optimal or maximal tension as long as you're contracting your muscles as hard as possible. Increased transference to a 1 rep max. And then, decreased oxygen equals incapacity to remove waste equals increased local growth factors. I completely forgot to talk about that. That is one of the most beneficial things to lifting a lightweight slow, is that you can maintain constant tension. So what happens is when the muscles are contracted, depending on how hard they're contracted, so if you're maximally contracting them, what's going to happen is blood entry into the muscle is going to be limited, therefore oxygen entry into the muscle is going to be limited. You're going to create a hypoxic state. Therefore, lactate and other accumulated metabolites are going to be, their removal is going to be limited. Anyways, so what happens is the metabolic waste is going to accumulate, and the body's going to perceive this to be a very, very stressful situation, to which it responds by increasing the release of local growth factors. And the reason it does this is to protect itself against future stressful situations. So it's going to provide the body with what it needs to get bigger and stronger, so that if it ever has to face these stressful situations again, it's not as stressful. At the bottom here, you can see it says traditional. So a traditional rep is kind of the middle ground between the two that I've discussed above, and that you're trying to impart some degree of acceleration and impart some degree of tension onto the muscles while conserving energy. And the way that you would impose a demand by performing your reps this way is by performing more reps. The more reps you perform, the greater demand you're going to impose on your body. And at the bottom there it says minimal effort. That's another type of rep that you can do. You would only really do that if you're ever entering like a competition where the winner was the one that performed the most amount of reps. In those cases, you're going to want to expend the lowest amount of energy possible so that you could perform the most amount of reps possible. Is it good for building muscle? No. Is it good for anything else? No. But if the goal is to win a competition of whoever performed the most amount of reps, then you're going to want to expend the least amount of energy when performing your reps so that you can perform more. The downside would be that if there is a technical error, you're going to expend more energy trying to correct the error that you made. So, it's not all pros for minimal effort either. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different ways that you can go about imposing a demand on your body. And depending on what your goal is and what you want to accomplish, you might want to include some of these into your strategy so that you can maximize your return on investment of time and effort. The dogs are going nuts. I've done enough here to provide you with enough information to maximize your return on investment of time and effort. So I'm going to cut it short. If you like the information, feel free to share it. Click the fucking button at the bottom, subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep bringing it.